There's a darkness that goes deeper than sadness, a silence that feels louder than noise, a kind of falling where you're not sure if you'll ever rise again. This is the dark night of the soul, and it nearly broke me. Everything I thought I believed was stripped away. Everything that once brought me comfort, gone. There were nights I couldn't cry, and days I couldn't speak, but somehow, through the ache, 5 things helped me survive. And today, I want to share them with you. Not as advice, not as a fix, but as offerings from someone who's walked the shadow path and found something sacred in the dark. The first thing that saved me was radical acceptance. Not passive resignation, not numb indifference, but a full-bodied, heartbreaking, soul-level surrender to what is. I had to stop asking why I felt this way. Stop resisting it. Stop demanding answers from a universe that had gone silent. Because the harder I fought the dark night, the deeper I sank. Radical acceptance didn't mean I gave up. It meant I gave in to the reality of my experience, to the truth that I couldn't control this descent, that maybe I wasn't meant to. It meant letting go of timelines, of expectations, of trying to be the version of myself that had it all figured out. It meant saying I don't know what's happening to me, but I will stay. I will witness this, even if it breaks me. And in that surrender, something softened. The darkness didn't disappear, but it stopped being my enemy. It became a teacher, visual idea, a person floating underwater, at first panicking, then slowly relaxing and allowing themselves to be held by the water. Surrender is not the end. It's the beginning of transformation. Second was something I never expected: sacred stillness. I had always been a doer, a fixer, someone who journaled, meditated, did yoga, read spiritual texts, prayed. But when the dark night came, all of that fell away. My rituals felt hollow. My prayers echoed into silence. Even journaling something I once loved felt like writing on ashes. At first, I panicked. If I couldn't do anything, how would I heal? How would I progress? But over time, the silence began to speak, not in words, not in ideas, but in presence. The stillness wasn't empty. It was alive. It was holding me. And I began to realize, sometimes the soul doesn't want movement. It wants rest. Not passive idleness, but sacred stillness. Stillness that says you don't have to prove anything. You don't have to earn your healing. You are enough even now, especially now. So I stopped trying to fix myself. I let the stillness hold me. And I found that in the pause, something deep within me began to heal. Quietly. Visual idea. A misty forest at dawn, with a person seated peacefully under a tree. Wind rustles, leaves softly. No motion. Just being. Stillness isn't nothingness. It's the soul's way of breathing. The third thing that helped me, perhaps more than I realized at the time, was finding soul companions. Not friends who tried to cheer me up, not mentors who gave me advice, but those rare few who could sit beside me in silence and say, "Me too." People who had no desire to fix me, only to witness me. There were days I couldn't articulate what I was feeling, but I didn't have to. They didn't demand clarity. They didn't need me to make sense. They just stayed, and that changed everything. Sometimes we think we need answers, but what we really need is someone who doesn't flinch in the presence of our darkness, someone who won't look away. These people, these soul companions, were my lifeline. They reminded me that I wasn't crazy. I wasn't broken. I was becoming, and even though my journey was mine alone, I didn't have to walk it entirely in solitude. They showed me a kind of love that doesn't rescue but respects. A love that trusts the sacred process of another soul's unraveling. If you find even one person like that, hold them close. If you don't yet, trust that they are searching for you. 2. Visual idea. 2 people sitting together on a bench at dusk, not talking, simply being. One places a gentle hand on the other's shoulder. You don't need someone to fix you. You need someone to walk with you. The 4th thing that kept me alive, sometimes barely, was trusting the unseen. Even when I felt nothing, even when I doubted everything, even when the idea of God felt like a story someone else believed, some part of me, ancient, wordless, deeper than thought, kept breathing. There were moments I wanted to give up, truly. And not in a poetic way, but something inside me whispered, keep going. I don't know if it was faith. Maybe it was soul memory. Maybe it was the part of me that had survived many deaths before. But I began to trust that just because I couldn't see the path didn't mean I wasn't on one. I began to live with less certainty and more reverence, less doctrine, more mystery, less control, more surrender. The unseen didn't promise me anything. It didn't give me answers, but it gave me presence, a flicker, a tiny, stubborn light. And that was enough to take one more breath, one more step, one more day. Visual idea. A person walking through a dark forest trail with a tiny lantern. Light barely touching the edges of the path. Just because it's dark doesn't mean the light is gone. And finally, the 5th thing that helped me survive the dark night was letting myself be reborn. This was the hardest part, because I didn't want to let go of who I used to be. I wanted to go back to feel normal again, to return to the familiar, the safe, the me I once recognized. But the dark night doesn't just take, it transforms. And what I didn't realize was that I wasn't just losing parts of myself, I was shedding them. Parts that were never mine, parts I had outgrown, parts that were built from fear, performance, and pleasing. There came a moment when I finally stopped trying to glue the old pieces back together. I let the identity I clung to dissolve. I grieved her, that version of me. I thanked her, and then I buried her. What came after wasn't dramatic. There was no burst of light, no chorus of angels. It was a quiet morning, a single breath, a small, fragile feeling of aliveness. Not better, not enlightened, just real. I began to feel the sun again. Not every day, but some days. I started laughing not because the pain was gone, but because I remembered I was more than pain. I was still here. Letting myself be reborn meant trusting that the new self would emerge in its own time. Not perfectly, not instantly, but honestly. And that was enough. Visual idea. A phoenix gently rising from the ashes in slow motion, not in a blaze of glory, but with grace and quiet strength. Warm dawn light in the background. You don't return from the dark night as who you were. You emerge as who you've always been.